Welcome to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast. Hawkeye Sidekick hurling podcast with your host Mark Kennedy, joined this week by Kieran Collins. Kieran, how are things?
I'm very good, Mark. Thank you. And yourself?
Oh, sure, great. Look, we had an epic weekend last weekend in provincial hurling championship fair. I suppose tonight we'll review those two games, maybe take a little bit of a new perspective on things, and also we'll look at the All-Ireland preliminary quarterfinals that are scheduled for Carlow and Tullamore this Saturday. I suppose, Kieran, let's kick off first with the Munster Senior Hurling Championship final. You were down in TUS Gaelic grounds. Now, unfortunately, due to work commitments, I wasn't able to go, but the pictures look magnificent, and what a magnificent game to boot here with plenty of drama right up to the final whistle.
Absolutely, Mark. And I think even before the game, just the atmosphere around the ground, I think the Gaelic grounds has lacked a few of these big games in recent times, Thurles, and especially now with Páirc Uí Chaoimh on board as well, but just the, real buzz around even the city and around the ground before, it was incredible. I suppose the weather helps as well. I suppose it all came together for, such an outing or a good day out, and I think if you're at the game, I don't know how I think it watched differently on television than it did live. I think it was kind of tense. I think both teams were tense, especially at the start of the game. And I suppose look, the early nerves, full house, in the Gaelic grounds, the noise, the atmosphere, the colour, it was all incredible. And I suppose, from a player's point of view, I think sometimes we forget these guys are human too, and I'm sure there's a lot of nerves involved, and taking it all in themselves. And I thought it was a nervy start, but I think Clare looked a bit more sharper than Limerick, especially at the start, and took their scores easier. I think we get to the referee in a while. I think the referee definitely that first 5 or 7 minutes let things go. I thought it was looking like we're going to have a repeat of last year's performance with Keenan from Wicklow, who really let things flow. It was probably one of the games of last year and probably the games of the decade even. But I think after that 5 or 7 minute spell, he started to get a hold on it. He started to blow for things he hadn't blown for in the first few minutes. And I think so we'll get to later on, he got a few good decisions wrong. One of them really highlighted in the last couple of days. But I think for Clare, they had a huge task coming into the game with their resident fullback, Conor Cleary. Obviously named earlier in the week, but I think a lot of people knew it would be a big ask if he was there with the injury he sustained a few weeks ago. I don't think anyone saw the replacement in Cian Nolan coming in. I think as a young lad, he's taken a lot of slack the last couple of days. I think a lot of it's unjustified. I don't think he did a whole point wrong. If you're wanting a guy to man mark, you want him touch tight to your attacker, and I don't think he can be accused of any different. He was stuck to Gillane all day. I just think that the ball that Gillane was getting in, the delivery of the ball was exquisite. It was exactly how Gillane wanted it. And I think it's just Gillane's pace and his turn, I think, is what sets him apart from other attackers. He's just that turn and pace that I think defenders struggle with. I think where a lot of defenders have to decelerate to take a turn. Gillane powers through, and that's where he pulls away. But I think, look, he's taken a lot of slack, but I don't think he did a whole pile wrong. I think when it came to, there was one stage there, early second half, where the two guys inside, Nolan and Rory Hayes, were both on yellow cards. So you're leaving these two guys in a bit of a tricky situation that I think it's probably an unfair situation to leave them in. With the ball that was going in, I think Limerick the intent was there early. Any ball that was put in directly aimed at Gillane. And I think from a Clare manager point of view, I think they might look back with a bit of regret that, switch it up some way, that to have two guys inside on yellows, it was inhibiting them guys from making if they needed to make a tackle, because either a black card or a red card was going to be dished out, But I think for Cian Nolan himself, I think it was a hard day at the office. But personally, I think he didn't do a whole pile wrong.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, because I set you off air here. I just came down just before throw-in, and then the announcement was made on Sunday game that Conor Cleary obviously wasn't going to play, Cian Nolan in. So I imagined straight away, Kieran, that look, a new guy coming into that position, you'd at least support him, in terms of maybe a sweeper or maybe put the wing back there just to basically provide a little bit of support. But I think the Sunday game fairly well illustrated it. The likes of John Conlon in the midfield, half forward line of of the Clare, massive ball was coming in throughout, and I totally agree with you, Kieran. I think Clare management certainly on Keane. I don't care who you are as a fullback, with that level of ball going in, like the 60-40 ball, the 70-30 ball. I mean, Keane Nolan was on a hiding to nothing, really, to be perfectly honest. And look, Rory Hayes was on Seamus Flanagan, but I think Limerick realised fairly quickly that Galan against Keane Nolan, it was a one-to-one matchup, and they were going to continue to abuse this all day long, and so it proved. And I mean, it was required from Limerick's standpoint, because I thought Clare had started the game much better. They seemed to be a bit more sharper. The middle third seemed to be, very good in terms of even the half-back line. Dermot Ryan scoring an early point there. Even the likes of Cathal Malone really getting involved. Tony Kelly was slowly but surely getting involved as well. So I think from a Clare perspective, literally on the turnover ball, there was 15 turnovers for Clare in that first half. I thought an awful lot of things went right for them, but there was self-inflicted wounds here, particularly on the Keane Nolan, but also some of the shooting as well. And I mean, the Mark Rogers goal, fortuitous as it was, I thought immediately after it was maybe the deciding of the game here, because they had 2 or 3 opportunities here, Kieran, to really stake a claim, go 5-6 points up, and really put Limerick under the pin of the collar, and they didn't do so.
Yeah, it's actually, I was marvelling over Conlon. I was watching him, he was in front of me in the second half, and like going forward, he's exceptional. And if you just watch his movement, you can see he's reading the game. He's reading, getting into areas before the ball even comes in. He's playing like a sweeper role, and it seemed to be with less regard for defending. And I think that Sunday game showed that space, like the space between the Clare half-back line and the two, and Rory Flanagan and Keane Nolan, like there was acres of it. And that suited Limerick, and that was a game they obviously set out to play for the start. I think the first ball Limerick got was that ball into Galan. And I think Clare were possibly a little bit lucky. I think, Keane Nolan pulled down Galan possibly 4 or 5 times before he was issued a card. So I think Gordon was a little bit lenient in that regard. Anytime the ball went in, it was to Galan, and to be fair, look, majority of the time, Nolan dealt with it, but it was, was it within the rules of the game? No, it wasn't. He was either pulled down or it was illegally challenged. So I think he got away with a few more than he might have got away with a different referee. But yeah, I think the Clare half forward line, I think they've shown it in games gone by, is their will to get forward. Probably similar to Limerick, but another mistake from the management that. The early intent was visible that Limerick were going to play a ball into Galan, but they didn't close in that area. They didn't push, sit a little bit deeper to try and protect their full back line and the 2 inside. And that's one change it didn't make. And every day, all day, the ball was being pumped into Galan. I think Rory Hayes did a good job in Flanagan, and a lot of that was probably down to the Munster final last year, where the roles were probably reversed, where Flanagan got the better of Rory Hayes, where he scored 7 points off him. But I think, aside from that, defensively, I think Clare, I suppose, left a lot of space for the 2 target men inside, and as we predicted, it would be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, for me, after about 20-25 minutes, I thought it was screaming out for David McNerney from Tulla to go back into full-back slot or protect Keane Nolan, even if it was a case of, I've heard that, Shane Amori coming in for 30 minutes, Keane Nolan coming in for 30 minutes, but it was still that potential David McInerney to come back in there and start even just literally cover space right in front of Galan here.
But and I think, to be fair, I'm sorry to cut across the mark, but I think Shane Amori did change it up when he did come on. I think it was that pace that that he has. Like, to be fair, Aaron Galan was out in front all day, up to that stage. And then I think when Shane Amori came on, he was getting out in front a little bit more and was cutting up ball coming to Galan. So, but I think that change, was effective. But I think it was just a little bit too late.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with you. I suppose we can get to the Clare goal as well. I mean, Limerick were battling back into that game as well. Like Segura O'Hegarty getting into the game, falling a bit deeper as well. Todd himself and Tom Morrissey really protecting half-back line, trying to nullify the space that Tony Kelly would often crave in these sort of fixtures. Good job there. Getting back into it, and then all of a sudden the goal kicks off. Now, we can say fortuitous enough, but all credit to Mark Rogers. like being the alert inside forward that he is, anticipates the goal. Nothing that Dan Morrissey or Nicky Quaid could do here, and they opened up the gap here.
Yeah, and I think for Rogers, probably his best game to date for Clare. Scoring 1-2 as well. He reacted quickest, and he took it well. But I think it was the next couple of minutes that that came for Clare that, as you said, it could have been more. They went in 3 points ahead. I think Ryan Taylor possibly should have just tapped the first ball. He ran in a goal. He should have tapped it over. I think then the second one, he kind of he knew he'd fumbled up the first one, and he went to pass it off, and possibly there was a goal on. You look at these are small margins in the game, but I suppose from a Clare point of view, if they had been going in a half time 6 points up, it's a different proposition for Limerick then. I mean, trying to claw back a 6 point lead as opposed to a 2 or 3 point lead. But there's a couple of different factors too, though, I think, which haven't been documented during the week. I think the media, and you could probably make a point for both games over the weekend, like the media, they hook onto a storyline and a story of events of how the game unfolded. And, I think people kind of catch onto this and go with this all week. But, I think a big point of that game that's kind of forgotten is when Gerard Hegarty took a ball and goal. He was pulled down outside. I think it was McInerney. He got through the tackle. Advantage should have been played. And then he was also pulled down by young Hogan inside before the pass for goal. So I think it was highlighted during the game. I think Brendan Cummins and Martin Morrissey had even commented on it that, advantage it should have been played. And I think that was a facet of the game for Liam Gordon Sunday that really annoyed me, was how the advantage rule was played. I think on a couple of different occasions the advantage was allowed. On this occasion it wasn't, so I don't see any reason why it couldn't have been. I think there was one point during the Clare game, or during the game, and I can't remember what part, but Clare were given advantage. The shot was taken and went wide, and Liam Gordon pulled it back for the free. I think if you go and take your shot on, that's you're waving you're waving your free, you're taking it on. So that's frustrating. But I think had Gerard Hegarty been allowed that advantage, there's a possible goal chance on for Limerick there, and there's no 3 point gap going into half time. It's closer. It's a 1 point game at most. And I think this hasn't been mentioned all week. There was a lot of refereeing decisions that were possibly wrong, but this hasn't entered the media all week.
Yeah, no, I think these games are tricky. They're tricky for match officials. Even after last year, the hype that was coming in here after last year in Thurles, an incredible game, the physicality, really trying to emulate that standard or that caliber, of officiating. Now, we know that John Keenan didn't really get many games straight after it, but again, he let the game flow. And I think Gordon, was literally caught in two stools here, whether to let the game flow or to, really kind of pick up on a few things. And I think both sides may have had a grievance there for sure. But I suppose Limerick going in at halftime 3 points down, I felt comfortable with 3 points. I thought they were blessed to be going down 3 points at halftime here, Kieran, because with the management, Kiley, Kinnerk, the backroom staff here would have made the necessary adjustments, and so it proved. I mean, third quarter was, this is another thing that hasn't been mentioned by the media that much. Limerick really dominated that third quarter and won it by 5 points, and culminating in that goal from Aaron Gillan. And I mean, you can talk all you want about last minute freeze and stuff, but again, that was probably only going to guarantee extra time. Fact of the matter is, I think the third quarter here, either side of halftime, really was a pivotal factor here for Limerick winning this game.
Yeah, it was an 8 point swing. Like Limerick were in 3 points down, and 55th minute they were 5 points up. And I think that was like they was outscored them 1-8 to 3 points in that period, and that was probably the period of the game that won it for Limerick. I think we know Limerick have proven in recent times that they're possibly a second half team, and I think we saw it as well back in the COVID times when the water breaks and the Limerick got to readjust. And I think it's a sure sign that the changes are being made by Kinnerk and Kiley. 9 out of 10 times they seem to work. I think Limerick really got a handle on the game. And I suppose the only, from a Limerick point of view, is that when they were at 5 points up, was that they didn't keep the foot in the throat and push it out further. I think when Gillan took his goal, he also had a very good chance at the second one, not too long after. Had that gone in, it's possibly a different game at that stage. But, I think credit to Clare, they fought back bit by bit, but they never got in front. I think Limerick kind of always had the answers. They kind of kept them at bay coming towards the end. And I think Clare had their chances. They had some wasteful shooting. The 12 wides in total and 6 balls dropping short. That's is that panic shooting? I don't know. Is it pressure? I think a few of their guys didn't perform to what we've seen this year. I think Aidan McCarthy was one of them. I'm not sure if there was an injury involved. I think Peter Duggan had a quiet game. I think he was really, didn't have any purple patch at all. Tony Kelly, Tony Kelly. He's one of the best hurlers in the country. Still come in with 6 points, but not as influential as we've seen him against Limerick in the last year or two. It is a Munster final. Obviously there's a lot more pressure on teams at this stage. Clare, their history, they've only won a handful of these Munster titles, in their history, and as we've seen in the last couple of years, it's not an easy thing to do. And I think more pressure was on Clare. There was a lot of hype in Clare building, over the last week or two. A lot more hype than I think there will be on in Limerick. I think the teams are at different stages, and Limerick are down the road a couple more years in this Clare team, and I think the hype, and the pressure may have got to them in the end. When you look at the stats like the wides count and balls dropping short, on another day, I think you look back to the first game with Limerick and Clare where they were a lot more clinical. I suppose they played with, the shackles were off that day. Everything went right for them, and I think while Clare had their missed chance, I think huge credit to Limerick. 12 finals, 12 wins in the John Kiley era, and fair stat. It's a fair number. Finals unbeaten, and they just always seem to find a way. Whatever gets thrown at them, they always seem to have an answer.
Yeah, it's been phenomenal. I mean, the last few years have been phenomenal. Look, we're both Limerick hurling fans. I know I'm based up in Galway these days, but look, passionate Limerick hurling fan. And to be perfectly fair, look, the last few years, this team the support is absolutely nothing. And I mean, to come through again a very competitive, intense Munster Senior Hurling Championship. Only 3 weeks ago, we were kind of looking at save our season. We have to beat Cork to even get into a top 3 and to really get a Munster Senior Hurling Championship title 5 in a row. I mean, it's an incredible achievement for John Kiley, Paul Kinnerk, and the rest of the players here, Declan Hannon, and the rest of the team here. But I mean, look, we can talk about Limerick a little bit, but even going back to the Clare, 50% from frees, 52% shots accuracy as well. I think these are other things here that we're missing from the general media this week. I mean, look at the number of shots, 44 shot opportunities Clare created. They had more turnovers than Limerick. I mean, all the stats ticked all the boxes for Clare, and it's really that accuracy. It was that composure. And I mean, even going down the stretch here, Kieran, when the game was in the melting pot, was it Ryan Taylor again with a chance straight out in front and puts it wide? These are kind of the calls, coming into the stretch into halftime, coming down the drive here and the full-time whistle. I mean, again, you'd hope from a Clare perspective that they can reflect and really regroup and try to improve their accuracy here, because, I mean, Limerick, 8 out of 9 frees, they did the job done, and the bench impact as well, I think, from both teams was quite noticeable here. I mean, the likes of Aaron Shanaher, Ian Galvin coming on, scoring a few points, but I thought Adam English and also Cathal O'Neill's contribution from Limerick, absolutely essential here for Limerick going down the stretch. So, look, I think Clare will have an awful lot of regrets. I know at the last minute and all the pitch invasion, stuff like that. Besides that, I think video analysis-wise, even taking that out, I think there's an awful lot here for Clare to probably pick apart.
There is, Mark. Yeah, and I think obviously there's going to be a grievance over that they, and a free not given in the last, 9 seconds. They'll get over that. Unfortunately, these things happen, and they're probably happening a lot more, frequent than we'd like. I think a lot of these big games, we tend to be talking about refereeing decisions at the end of them, and I think it just highlights that, there's something not right. And with all fairness to referees, like, it's a fast game. It's, from one man in the middle on his own. There's a lot going on. Frantic, dying seconds. The ball is spinning anywhere. It's a big call to make, and I don't think Liam Gordon had his best of days with the whistle, but it's hard to criticise him when there is so much going on, and he's not the only one. But I think GA need to look at it. There has to be, I think, more done to help police this. There's so many rules to think. Like, I think even Dima Burns got away with catching the ball 3 times earlier in the game. Things like this have to be picked up on. They're basic skills of the game. If you're coaching, you'd be thinking they shouldn't happen, but if they do, they should be pulled up on straight away. You look at him, Mike Casey got a yellow card in the first half. It was down in front of us there, and it was pretty innocuous. I don't think there was a whole pile in it. I think little things like that, annoy fans, but when you strip it all back and think of the job at hand for them, it's not a job I'd like to do. But aside from that, Leclerc had their grievances and totally understandable. There was a free there at the end. I do think Peter Casey and Tony Kelly, that part might have been a bit of a coming together, but definitely the second part there was definitely a free there. But look, for Clare, there's so many positives. Even not this game, but this year. Aside from the Tipperary game, they came to the Gaelic grounds and they went toe to toe to reign our Ireland champions, and they beat them by a point. Okay, look, Limerick could probably say we weren't at our best that night, but there is very, very little between these two teams, and it's shown over especially the last 2 years. And Clare, I think they're getting to where they deserve to be. They deserve to be the last 4. They deserve possibly a shot at All Ireland. I think they've been thereabouts. And I think they'll learn a lot of lessons from last year, especially that Kilkenny game and the Wexford game in the quarterfinals. But I think they will have a tough couple of weeks to get ready. And I'm sure last year would be in the back of the mind. The doubts will be in the back of the mind. But, I think if they use them as motivation and, and power through, hopefully get through Dublin and a semi-final against Kilkenny, you'd have, if they've learned from last year, that you hope to get it right for this year.
Absolutely. My wife and Carol's listening to this, so we'll probably scratch that last bit out. To be fair, though, Kieran, you're spot on there. I think for Clare, I think the motivation is the key, isn't it? I mean, an awful lot of good things happen in this Munster campaign. That Tipperary loss, I mean, with Rory Walsh, who isn't here tonight, but Rory had was really pinning that Tipperary result as being a key one for Clare. The fact that they lost that, but then the resiliency to come back and then to respond the way they did in TUS Gaelic grounds, I thought was nothing short of sensational. And then they backed it up with the Waterford win. And also, literally the Cork win was just fantastic. Dermot Ryan coming out here, being a prominent leader here. I think for Clare management, really, it's now just a case of really kind of trying to pick together here in terms of some squad depth issues, particularly defensively now. Conor Cleary is probably going to be a key question mark going into this All-Ireland series. So now it's a case of, I think Cian Nolan, again, we know his capability here. I think he'll have better days in Clare jersey. But again, I would stress a Shane Amori or a David McInerney or someone back there with a bit more experience really in that quarter-final will be essential here. So I think for Clare management, I think it's more on the management here, I think, here, Kieran, than the players. I think we know that the players here are absolutely standout. They've been going toe-to-toe with all the elite players from the province and also in Leinster for many a year now. So I think it's really the management have to really adjust here and really kind of reflect in terms of the next week going into this All-Ireland quarter-final. But look, Limerick, what can we say here, Kieran? 5 in a row. As you said, the 12 finals, 12 wins. It's been a fantastic, fantastic era for Limerick hurling here. And I mean, really bodes well here. They have the 4-week break, obviously. Recharge batteries and go again, particularly on that Saturday in July in the All-Ireland semi-final. I mean, they're in a great place.
Yeah, and I think John Kiley said it after the game. Our guys know what's going to happen for the next 4 weeks. They know, at what stage things are going to happen. We've been here before, and that has to be a huge plus. The 4-week break is obviously very welcomed as well. Hopefully, it'll give Cian Inch time to recuperate and maybe get back on the field. I think it'd be a huge bonus getting into Croke Park. I think Croke Park is a stadium and a field that suits Limerick. I think they have a good record there. I don't think any of the quarter-finalists are going to fancy facing Limerick in a semi-final there. But look, Mark, it's been exceptional for years. Geez, I grew up and probably the same yourself, and I resigned myself to the fact that I'd never see Limerick win in All-Ireland. And Jesus, to have 4 of them in a couple of years, and to win 5 Munsters, like winning a Munster growing up was a huge deal. Was it 96 and then 2013? So before now, and just an incredible bunch of players. All these naysayers and JP is buying us this and JP, absolute bullshit. JP is involved in Limerick hurling for the last 20-25 years more. Nothing has changed. It's just an exceptional group of players. The work was put in years ago, underage. what more can you say? I think it's an insult to say that we're being bought and we're buying All Ireland's. Limerick hurlers work harder than any hurlers or county panels up and down the country. And I think they're just an incredible bunch of players. And I think they're a team that will go down in history as one of the best teams to have ever played the game. And they're up there with that Kilkenny team. And I'm not going to say they're any better. I think it's a different era of hurling. And, it's not comparative really, but, they're an exceptional team. And I think as Limerick, we'll never see the likes again.
Absolutely. No, I remember coming out of Thurles after a quarter-final loss to Dublin when Ryan O'Dwyer ran havoc against Limerick in the first half. And I just talked to a fella from Turnafulla, and we just looked at each other and says, will I ever see in my lifetime an All-Ireland final win? And now we're a few years now and we're getting absolutely spoiled. So, fair play to the players and management. And as you say, the academy, the underage structures are there now. You can talk about the Hartigans here, JP McManus's, the Bennis's, all the Careys, all the hurling families here that have really kind of gone through here in terms of the graduate academies, that program. It's absolutely sensational at the program here. Anthony Daly coming in there for a year or two as well, really evolving it as well. So look, this doesn't happen by accident. We're seeing the likes of Adam English now, Colin Coughlin as well. I thought absolutely superb cameo when he came in. When you're bringing in 2 or 3 young guys coming in there as well, it's just so heartening to see. And as you say yourself, Croke Park is a pitch that has an awful lot of fond memories for this playing group, and particularly the likes of Keane Lynch here.
And I think, to be fair to John Kiley, the young guys coming in, he doesn't dog them anyway. It's like an apprenticeship. They come in, they get their league games this year. You won't see them for the championship, and then next year and so on. Like we see this year, Adam O'Brien and Donegal Dawley getting league time. We haven't seen them in the championship and probably won't. But I think next year, as they're a year older, they'll feature a bit more, and they'll be, Aidan O'Connor, these guys coming in, younger guys coming in again. Just Jimmy Quilty, there's a few more there.
Yeah.
There's no huge expectation on them at such a young age, like maybe it happens in other counties. They kind of have to serve an apprenticeship and prove, that they're capable. And I think Cathal O'Neill probably was fast tracked a little bit more than other players because of Keane Lynch's injury last year. But look at the experience he gained, at such a young age. An All-Ireland winner, and to bring the likes of Cathal in off the bench the weekend, it's huge plus. And these guys are battle hardened, and to bring them in to finish off the game, Cathal getting 2 points, and I think Adam as well getting a point, pivotal, needed, and it's great. It's great. Like we said, we're so many years in the doldrums and watching Tipperary's and Kilkenny's and Cork's win All Ireland's, and now it's our turn. And I think that if you look at the celebrations and get a crown on Sunday, that 5th Munster title means as much as the first one, and it was celebrated. And I think if you looked at the celebrations, you would see how much it means to Limerick people.
Absolutely. We couldn't even hear Tom Morrissey's Sunday game interview straight after it. The old Free From Desire. Dan's track was going in the background. I'm getting sick at this stage, but it's probably synonymous with celebrations at this stage on a sporting field. But congratulations to Limerick, commiserations to Clare. But both teams, I think, to be perfectly honest, have a major say in this All-Ireland series. I suppose, Kieran, we can move on to the Leinster Senior Hurling final in Croke Park. Now, we thought, that was kind of the heavyweight tussle. We talked last week in terms of this Leinster Senior Hurling final that both these 2 teams, Galway and Kilkenny, had to take the gloves off. And to be perfectly fair, Leinster Hurling served their best fixture to last year. What an epic encounter. Kilkenny winning here 421 to 226. Killian Buckley will go down in the annals here for that. Another epic Kilkenny never say die attitude goal at the end to win it right at the death. But both teams probably can come away with this with many positives.
Yeah, I think it was kind of highlighted during the round robin that first Kilkenny Galway game, there was an element of shadow boxing going on, and I think both teams expected to be definitely in the top 3, if not in the top 2. And I think for Kilkenny, winning it late has a death, and you see what it meant to them as well. That's their 4th. Everyone's talking about Limerick's 5, but okay, maybe it's a little bit harder. But Jesus, Kilkenny have won 4 in a row, which doesn't bode well for Galway, I suppose. But I think when you see Derek Ling running in there, it shows what I mean. I think for him in his first year as well, it's a huge result. I think there's a couple of ways you can look at the game. I think had Kilkenny not got that goal, I think the huge praise is going to be on Galway. Kilkenny are 8 points up, 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes left to go in that game. And they claw it back. And not only claw back the 8 points, but they go 2 up, into extra time. And I think if Galway held out, you'd be holding Galway in high esteem and we'd be talking Galway for the All-Ireland. But that late goal has changed everything. It probably exposes a few defensive frailties. I think if you look at the goals, maybe Mossy Keown's aside, I think, Walter Walsh, I think it's an incredible game, but his goal, he took that goal from 35, 40 yards, run straight for goal, unopposed, tackle went in. You look at Mikey Butler for even further, probably the halfway line. I think it was Billy Ryan made a run towards the line, which would actually open up the space for him. The Galway defender followed him and opened up, clear road from the halfway line to the goal and no tackle. That just can't happen. Not at this not in the final, not at any stage, but not when you're contesting trophies. And I think conceding 4 goals, it's a huge flaw. I think in the Galway team is defensively. I think they made a mistake having Pádraig Mannion on Owen Cody. I think Pádraig Mannion offers so much to Galway going forward as well. I think when you're taking away or putting the responsibility on him to man mark Owen Cody, what's it saying in the trust for their cornerbacks? I think that was a big mistake for Galway. You look at, it wasn't all doom and gloom. I think Conor Whelan, I think, he has had maybe an indifferent year this year, but, incredible with 1-6. He was everywhere. And I think, it's only in sports and starts if the other Galway attackers got in with him. I think Concannon was in and out. I think Nyland probably had one of his better days. But I think the main word is consistency with this Galway team and the lack of it sometimes. I think Conor Cooney, we all know how good he can be, but then on the big day like this, I think he really did not show up. I think on Cannon and stages as well, it was maybe the last 10, 15 minutes he stood up when they were clawing back that 8 point deficit. But, I think at different points, a lot of these Galway players go missing, and I think the pressure was on Galway, I think, and especially on Henry Shefflin to deliver some silverware this year. Year 2. Year 1, you get away with these things, but year 2, closing in on Kilkenny who are going for 4 in a row. And from here, personally, I think that the roads that Galway have to travel to try and win the All-Ireland, I think it's very unlikely. You'd imagine Tipperary will have enough for Offaly, and if they do, for Galway to play Tipperary, winner goes and plays Limerick. And if they did come over Limerick, they're going to have to play a Clare or Kilkenny to win it. And I think it's an arduous task for a team who I think are lacking consistency. On any given day, Galway could beat any of them 3 or 4 teams. But can they do it 3 days in a row? And I don't think they can.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point, Kieran. I think the Leinster hurling final really did summarise Galway's Leinster campaign. It was very up and down. I mean, first quarter-wise, they actually really did set the marker down. They went 6 points to 1 up fairly early. Got Conor Whelan involved early, Kevin Cooney, the usual suspects, but then letting Kilkenny back in, the Mossy Keown goal. As you said, there's a few goals here. I definitely thought there, definitely on the Walter Walsh one as well. I think 1 or 2 of the Galway guys kind of just gave up. At
that stage, they let Kilkenny score 1-5 without reply. They were 6-1 up.
It's really disappointing. And I mean, they go into the sheds at halftime level, but again, Kilkenny really do posing that kind of killer instinct again. Mikey Butler's goal, I thought, really did emphasise it as well, didn't it? They had exploited the fact that Galway weren't tracking runners back, and I hate to say this from a Galway perspective, but I've seen this against Antrim, I've seen this against Westmeath, where players weren't basically tracking players back. And it really proved the point. And fair play to Mikey Butler. I mean, it was an outstanding goal here with Blanchfield, the link-up play, and the strike was absolutely sensational.
Yeah, great goal.
Great goal. And I mean, inspirational goal from Mikey Butler here. I mean, given the injury crisis that Kilkenny had going into this game, Mikey Carey was named at wing back. Fact is, he couldn't play. You had Richie Reid, you had, Keown, we had Mullen basically being ruled out as well. I think this is the manner of the win here, Kieran, really did send to me that this Kilkenny team is as resilient as it has been even with the Cody era, and you saw Brian Cody at the end, literally the first guy leaping up out of his seat when Killian Buckley gets the goal to win it. But the resiliency, the never say die attitude, the work rate, everything that we associate with Kilkenny, it's alive and kicking. And again, similar to Limerick here, I think as Killian Buckley said, the season is open for them now. They're 70 minutes away from an Ireland hurling final where they want to be.
Yeah, I think it's that never die attitude. It's embedded in them now. I think it's a part of Kilkenny hurling, and I think anyone that comes up along in the future, young hurlers, it'll be trained into them. It'll be bait into them basically. And they never give up. And it's to their credit, if you're following the team, that's all you'd ask is that you don't give up. And I think at any stage in that extra time, when Galway got that point to go 2 up, you could say this is it, game over. That's what you'll be thinking. But not Kilkenny, and as I said, I think it was Conor Whelan said, they say it's never over till the whistle is gone, and it's true. They have an incredible resilience, and they're it has to be admired, and the attitude has to be admired. But yeah, I think for Kilkenny, 4 in a row. Okay, look, there's a lot of talk about Leinster hurling is weaker than Munster hurling, and possibly it is, but you're looking forward now, and Kilkenny have got to this point. Not too many testing games under their belt, but you're thinking health wise and injury wise. You'd hope that there could be in a better vein of form come 4 weeks time. They'd hope to get Adrian Mullen back in the field, and if it is clear that they play or Dublin or Carlow, if we're going to be dramatic about it, they will relish the challenge. I think they'll expect that. They'll expect Clare. They'll expect a Clare coming looking for revenge, and these boys will relish that challenge. And when you have players like Pádraig Walsh on the bench, you know how good a team you have. I think they've developed some. I think we all thought they were, when that golden age team, a lot of these guys are retiring, that they're going to lack. But there's some good hurlers there. Like, I suppose not household names to the someone who doesn't follow too closely, but Mossy Keown, like, he's what a goal getter, and Billy Ryan, Tom Fielding, who played a bit last year but really coming into this year, thought he had a great game against Wexford as well, scoring 1-3. TJ Reid still there, plugging away. I think Owen Cody's having a great year. I think if they can get Mullen back in, he offers them so much going forward, and the work he does around the middle of the field. They've options to back. I do think they've question marks too at the back. I think Lawler could be a potential weak link for teams who are looking at how to expose them, which is one of the best cornerbacks in the country in Mikey Butler, and one of the best goalkeepers in the country in Owen Murphy. And I think TJ aside, they're a team. They're not reliant on a talisman. I think they're a balanced team, and when you have the attitude they have, it's going to get you a lot of the way.
Absolutely, and I think you'd nailed it there in terms of the team collective. Walter Walsh comes in with 1-2. An incredible cameo from Walter. Mikey Butler, the 1 goal, obviously. Mossy Keown, 1 goal. Killian Buckley, 1 goal. Owen Cody, as he said, I thought was man of the match, really, to be fair to him. I thought, everything he did was just sensational. Kieran Kenny as well. A guy that's been on that panel for a few years, steps up with 2 points. John Donnelly, 2 points. David Blanchfield as well. Huge game for him as well in that halfback position. Pádraig Walsh comes in, chips in, and Billy Drennan, one of these guys that's coming back from injury. So I think from that perspective from Kilkenny, an awful lot of good things, and the resiliency at the end. But I suppose going back to Galway as well, 8 points down after 50 minutes, there was resiliency there to kind of get back into it. Jason Flynn's goal obviously was kind of a key turning point there. Kevin Cooney then turned up with a few points as well. Thought there was some good passage of play there for Galway. Obviously Nyland comes in, chips in a few points or two, but from a Henry Sheffrin perspective, he must be scratching his head here in terms of that consistency level. But particularly at the end, when 2 points up, a dangerous lead in hurling at any given point of the game. But I just thought the composure at the end, Kieran, particularly from some of the experienced players back there, what left a bit to be desired here, Kieran. I don't know what your viewpoint was on that Killian Buckley goal, but even before Pádraig Mannion's having to, with no hurl, having to kick it and hope for the best, I thought particularly down in the sideline area, I thought even get it out for a sideline ball, just basically reset. I thought there was a bit of composure issues there from Galway, really, and from some of the more senior players.
There was real panic.
Yeah.
Pandemonium. Do you know, like there was how many attempted lifts, how many,
I know.
swipes and missed, pure panic. Maybe a certain element of tiredness too. But to me, it just said panic and kick it out, lie on it. Whatever you have to do just to kill the moment, I suppose. And as you said, reset. I don't think any fault can be apart Mannion. The ball was on the ground, he no hurl.
Yeah.
He tried to boot it as far as he could. Unfortunately, it fell into Killian Buckley's hands, and I think, to be fair, he had a bit of work to do before he got to finish it as well. He had a kind of a sidestep, so well taken goal. But yeah, I think emotionally that's going to hurt Galway this week. They had it, they had the hard work done, and to be fair, look, as I said, if they had won, if that goal hadn't gone in, we'd be praising Galway. They were 8 points down, 50 minutes. They still won the game, or they would have won the game with 2 points. And it would be a different outlook on the game completely. But, I think it just shows frailty, just the fact that to panic. I think, if you were to compare that with Limerick, who don't panic, and where all you want is a clear mind, as I say, pull it over the line, just to reset yourself. And I think, it's, for Shefflin, I think it's not an issue in this team. It's probably an issue he's inherited. It's in the teams gone before him. We've seen consistency issues with Galway, blown hot and cold. I don't know what the cause of it is. It's no different to Galway teams of the past. On their day, Galway could beat anyone. But as I said earlier, I just can't see them doing it 2 or 3 days on the hop against big teams, especially if it comes down to the crunch and if players are going to panic, like in that situation on Sunday. I think to me it just shows frailties, defensively.
Based up here in Galway, my next door neighbour and his family were shouting once Cooney and Nyland get the goals, you could feel the deflation. Kieran, you couldn't but feel sorry for him, for Galway, in terms of that scenario. But again, it is a tricky run-in for them, isn't it, really, now with the All-Ireland quarter-final looming and having maybe, a Tipperary athlete to come into it. So I think for Galway, a bit of soul-searching in terms of picking themselves up. I think management will be earning their corn this week, really picking up the Galway players and really go again, because I think we've seen the potential here at Galway, particularly in the first and third, fourth quarter here, when they got on top, and we've seen it historically with Limerick. They're well able to match Limerick. So I think they can put the game together, but I think now, as you say, they're going to have to do this in the quarterfinal, semi-final, and ultimately an All-Ireland final. And I think that was something that was challenged by like Liam Sheedy, guys like that a few weeks ago, and now the acid test is here. So look, Killian Buckley as well, the Rodri's goal for Man City was very kind of, over a body of players. And I don't know if Killian Buckley, get it on target, I suppose, but look, super finish from him. And look, all credit, 75, Bob O'Keefe's for Kilkenny, 4 in a row. Congratulations to Kilkenny there. Look, Galway, you hope for them to just regroup and get back into it. Because this All-Ireland series is going to be absolutely wide open, I think.
But where do you think it leaves Shefflin, Mark, going forward?
Look, I'll be brutally honest with you here. I think this is a body blow for his tenure. There's no masking it. I think after last year, particularly, we were both down in Kilkenny on a stag party in Clare's pub, and we saw the celebrations afterwards. I think for Henry, this was probably penciled in the calendar, get to a Leinster hurling final, play Kilkenny, and get the revenge. And I think, to be perfectly honest, for Henry, he won't probably show it publicly, but I'd say privately, devastated in terms of how that game really unfolded really at the end. So, look, I think it remains to be seen. He has a 3-year term, but again, year 2, if there is an All-Ireland quarter-final loss here, I think there's a crossroads here between Galway board and Henry himself. So I think next few weeks are going to be critical here, Kieran. I genuinely do. I think Galway supporters do actually admire Shefflin, like trying to kind of provide that steel. But again, it's a work in progress, as we've seen. The composure issues at the end, particularly some of the wides as well, particularly in that first half. I
think as well, some teams are talisman, but I think the importance of Conor Whelan for them, if you took him out of that team on Sunday, what's left if you have Conor Cooney putting in a performance like he did. I think Kevin Cooney's probably having a good year.
Yeah.
Like Nyland is probably a little bit hot and cold. He had a good day against Wexford earlier in the championship, and I think from play he's probably not scoring as much as he should. He had a good day Sunday with 4 points, but are they carrying him for just having a good free taker? I think it probably remains to be seen as well. I think there's probably a good few younger guys there, like Kieran Collins and McLaughlin and these guys coming, but I think it's a lack of leadership is what's probably the issue in Galway, especially up front.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a key week, a week or two here, Kieran. The word that was described to me today was deflation, but I mean, I think from a Galway perspective, there's only one way to respond now, and that's up. And look, we're going to preview the prelim quarterfinal. Whoever comes out of that Tipperary Offaly game is going to be well hardened anyway. So look, season's not lost for Galway, but this has been a blow, no doubt about it. But I think they need to just focus in on the next game, to be fair. The All-Ireland prelim quarterfinal previews, I suppose. Let's get to them, Kieran. We've 2 on tap on Saturday afternoon, 4:00 in Tullamore. Offaly against Tipperary, and I mean, from a neutral perspective here, this looks quite a tasty game. Like being down at the under-20 All-Ireland hurling final, speaking to a few Offaly folk there, they're really going to be looking forward to this game. Really, after the Joe McDonagh Cup disappointment, I think certain players within Offaly are looking to produce a better performance against a Tipperary side here that had an underwhelming performance against Waterford. Let's put it out there. Now, Liam Cahill and Michael Bevins obviously have had an awful lot of evidence to throw at the team in the last few weeks. But I suppose, Kieran, how do you see this game going in Tullamore?
I suppose from an Offaly point of view, aside from losing the Joe McDonagh final, they've had a great year. I think they were unbeaten in every game to that. They've secured the Division 1 hurling. They were very close to for Lee McCarthy hurling for next year. Maybe they mightn't see it now, but maybe for the long road, it might suit them. They have a lot of young guys, good young guys coming, and maybe they might be able to develop them a little bit more in Joe McDonagh next year. But aside from that, I think they've had a great year, and I think they'll be hurt. I think they expected to win that Joe McDonagh final. I think it's a good litmus test for them as well, just to see where they're at, as opposed to one of the top hurling counties like Tipperary. They're also bordering counties. I'm sure there'll be a lot of rivalry going on there. And I'm sure from an Offaly point of view, it's probably a long time since they played Tipperary at home in Tullamore. And all that is motivation and feel into it. I think from a Tipperary point of view, I think so far they'll be happy with their year. They'll be happy to come out of Munster. I think they presumed they were going to be in the Munster final, and that has to be a little bit of a letdown for them. And I think coming off the back of that Waterford game, where they were very disappointed. But I think Cahill will have that to use his advantage. Mikey Beavens in training. I don't think we're going to see him as flat as that. They probably had a little break now. They've had a chance to kind of recharge the batteries a bit. The round robin is testing, probably physically and mentally. But I think Tipperary's squad depth might not be as what other counties might have. I think they've had some key injuries, like of Jason Ford and Carl Barrett. Pivotal guys for them, and I think if they can get them back on the field, I suppose really you'd have to fancy Tipperary, wouldn't you? And going into a potential quarter-final against Galway, it'll be a rip-roaring game, and I think Tipperary, they've had a good year compared to what last year was. It was always going to be better. But for Liam Cahill, I think I think it's Jackie Tyrrell pointed to us that the dangerous team in this, All-Ireland series, and potentially could be. On their day, they have the beating of any of the teams that are left. But I think for Offaly, this will be a good test to see where they are at, and for Carlo as well against Dublin. It's a chance it's a free shot really, at a big team. And if Tipperary turn up as cold and as flat as they were against Waterford, you'd have to give Offaly every chance. But I can't see lightning strike twice, especially with Liam Cahill involved.
Yeah, because I mean, from a Tipperary perspective, all indication is that Jason Ford is fit. He's ready to go. But on the downside, it looks like Gerard O'Connor is probably going to be a scratch for this game. There's also probably question marks over Cahill Barrett over the HIA because he was missing for that Waterford game, and he was badly missed inside full backline. I've heard Craig Morgan's probably looking like a return at some point during that match. Barry Heffernan looks as if it's uncertain in terms of when he's back. So I think from that perspective, look, Liam Cahill and the Tip team probably got the reality check that they needed going into this All-Ireland quarter-final prelim. I think from an Offaly perspective, I think it is key for them to stay in this match for as long as they can. Don't let this out 5-6 points after 15-20 minutes. I think Tipperary's goal here will try to get this game over and done with as quick as they can. Because we've seen it with Laois, we've seen it with other teams here. If you let these teams literally settle into the game, things get a little bit nervy, particularly in that third and fourth quarter. And I mean, it's a local derby game. My father being from Bursakane, Eglish direction, they're only 10, 15 kilometres away from Burr. It's been the talk of the place, really, essentially, this week. And Offaly fans are confident that the team will put on a performance. May not win, but they'll actually give Tipperary a right scare. And I think, genuinely, this might be the one where Offaly, I hope... Look, Offaly created an awful lot of scoring opportunities against Carlow in that Joe McDonagh Cup final. If they can create the 56 scoring opportunities and get to about a 60-70% differential, Tipperary will be in for a game here, Kieran. So I think, look, you have to tip Tipperary, but that last game is an aberration. We won't know until Saturday for sure. I suppose Carlow v Dublin here, Kieran. Again, another one that's kind of a nicely poised game. I mean, Carlow winning Joe McDonagh Cup, there was an awful lot of good vibes in the county after it. They've quickly focused in against the Dublin side that really did impress me, particularly in that final round robin game. But again, down in Netwatch, Cullen Park, the hope here is that Carlow deliver a performance and really put it up to Dublin.
I think the danger for the likes of Tipperary Dublin is if they underestimate the challenge. But I think both teams have probably top management, and Micheál O'Donoghu's been on the block for a while, and I think he'll have Dublin ready. I think this is bonus territory for Dublin. I think that the fact that they've come out of Leinster, they probably were unlucky at one stage there. They were eyeing up or very close to the Leinster final. But looking back at the year, they have probably been impressive in the championship. I think for the bar the Antrim game aside, where the first game where they were probably lucky to get away with a draw up there. But I think in that extra game, they really came out to win it, and their long range shooting impressed me in games. And when you have a guy like Donald Burke, on your side, you have a good start to the day. But I think for Carlow, I think it's been a great year. I think Carlow's aim has already been hit. I think the target is to win the Joe McDonagh. But as I said, the same for Offaly. This is a chance for these guys. They're going to be playing Liam McCarthy teams. They're going to be playing Dublin next year. I think it's a chance for them to test out and see where they're at, and see what work they might need to do over the coming year. But Carlow timed their run to perfection, for this Joe McDonagh final, and really impressive style of hurling. And I think if they play, the long ball in, Dublin have the capable full back in Owen O'Donnell in there to keep that at bay. But they said it all depends on the attitude of these teams, and if Dublin go down to Carlow thinking they're going to get a handy win, and it could be caught in the hop. But all this aside, I think you have to go to the Liam McCarthy teams that Dublin and Tipperary, and you think they have enough experience and probably have a better panel, and I suppose on paper better players to see the job out. I think once the attitude is right, you'd have to see Dublin going through, and I think for these two teams, if they do come out of it going into the quarterfinals, they will be trying to catch two teams who were probably hurt. Both teams were only beat by the minimum, in both finals, and I think in different ways, Clare are going to be aggrieved over the finish of the game, and Galway obviously that late goal from Killian Buckley. It's emotional baggage, and I suppose it's how both teams are going to deal with it is the question, and how they fight back from it. And I think we saw with Clare last year, they put everything into that Munster final. Everything went right for them on the day, and they still didn't win. And I think we saw the result of that afterwards. In reality, Wexford should have beaten them in that quarter final, and we saw what Kilkenny did to them afterwards in the semi final. And I suppose that's has to be in the back of minds of Clare players, management, fans, anyone involved. That how do we know what happened last year isn't going to happen again this year? And I think for Galway as well, they're going to have a hard week or two to prepare themselves for either Dublin or Carlow. It's going to be probably a hard week this week, but going into that game, Tipperary, it will be no easy task. And I'm sure if Tipperary can get over Offaly and maybe get a few guys back in, they'll fancy their chance against Galway, and as I said, they're only a game away from an All-Ireland final at that stage. So I think for the prizes are there now, and it's knockout hurling from now in, and if the attitude is wrong or you have 40 50% shooting accuracy, you're not going to win, and there's no way back. There's no second chance anymore.
Yeah, no, exactly, Kieran. You summed it up quite well. I think even from a Carroll perspective, I think the bench impact, we didn't really see it in the Joe McDonagh Cup final. Was only two substitutes after 85 minutes. I think the likes of Marty Kavanagh, Doyle, the Nolans here really have to step up again. But again, from a Dublin, Micheál O'Donoghue perspective, this would be a lovely test because I think it's the variety of play from Carlow do show you in terms of the direct ball that they really did punish awfully in the Joe McDonagh Cup final is really going to come to the fore. So look, I'm probably hedging for Dublin in that game for sure. For me to tip off the game, just it's a banana skin written all over this here for me, Kieran, on Tipperary here. It'll be more to do with the attitude of the players. If there's a few injuries that haven't cleared up, bench impact that is a bit of a question mark given the injuries already. I give Offaly a good chance here. They may not win the game, but I think they'll give Tipperary as good as they get for the first 55, 60 minutes. So, look, I'll hedge it to Tipperary for sure. But, I mean, I would not be surprised if there's a shock. And that shock, I think, might be in Tullamore here, to be perfectly honest here. And it'll be interesting just to see the dynamic of that Tipperary team, particularly 20, 25 minutes. If Offaly, their backline have been impressive in Tullamore. They've really kind of impressed me in terms of their first touch, their organisation, the sweeper system here as well. They're going to nullify the space on the likes of a Jason Ford or James Cannon inside. So who's going to really step up here for Tipperary, in terms of, is it going to be Bow? Is it going to be Bonner-Marr? These sort of guys. So, look, I think if there is going to be a shock here, probably Tullamore. But, yeah, I'll hedge for the Lee McCarthy or the Munster-Leinster Senior Hurling Championship teams. But, look, the hope here is that the two Joe McDonagh Cup finalists really give as good as they get here and really do showcase the Joe McDonagh Cup for what it was this year. And it was an outstanding competition, and I think they will do that, Kieran. Absolutely. I suppose, Kieran, we've heard about Jackie Tyrrell and who his most dangerous county is. Still left in the All-Ireland series. I know you've Kilkenny and Limerick there sitting back, recuperating, recovering for 4 weeks' time for July 8th and 9th. Out of the other teams that are here, Kieran, who do you think is the most viable here to really knock either Limerick or Kilkenny off their perch here?
I think Tyrrell probably has a certain. I wouldn't. Yeah, I think Tipperary on their day could be dangerous. I think if they got the, all fit players back on the team, starting team, I think Cahill has done an incredible job this year with them. Intensity, just everything they didn't do last year, they're doing this year. I think that Limerick game is showcased, what they're about, the hard work, the hooks, blocks, the basic skills, like they had it all. I think the one downside or the downfall or, thing that might go against them is just a little lacking in strength and depth. And I think that shows, the round robin series is testing and you rely, and I think teams over the last couple of years, you rely on your bench. You rely on the same 3, 4, 5 guys coming off. And you need scores coming from the bench. And I don't know, do Tipperary have that to do it week in, week out, or, over a couple of games? I do think that if Tipperary could get over Offaly, they will be a real match for Galway. Galway, as we've said, on their day, Galway could beat anyone. But I think I'm going to write off Galway because I cannot see them winning 3 big games in a row. Hopefully they prove me wrong, but I think history shows it that, bar 2017, they're always they're lacking on some parts, whether it's players or on a given day where they just don't show up basically. And I think for me, I just can't see them doing it 3 days in a row. So I think that leaves Limerick, Tipperary, Kilkenny, and Clare. I think history has shown, and we might forget it sometimes, but you never write off Kilkenny. As we've talked about their work rate and the attitude they have, and geez, it gets you 75% of the way there, to win the game. I think Ling has carried on from Cody, and I suppose their game is changing. Like there's no doubt about it. I think Cody was probably wincing up in the stand watching Mikey Butler getting up for a goal. It wouldn't have happened in his times, but I suppose the game has changed, and Kilkenny have acknowledged that, and I suppose they've changed up how they play. Yeah, and I think they're mixing it pretty well, the short game and and going long as well. But I think it all depends on how Clare possibly react to the Munster final loss to Limerick. Like, I think for me right now, if I was calling the last four, I'm probably going to have to go Limerick, Tipperary, and Clare, Kilkenny. I think if you're to both games, I think obviously going to be a bit biased here as well, but I think Limerick, like, you have to first of all give them the respect that it's due to them. They have that will to win, and I think if they can get Keane Lynch back in fit, and in Croke Park, I think they have a good record there, and they like playing there. You'd fancy Limerick getting over either Galway or Tipperary in the semi-final. And I think it all boils down to the other semi-final where Clare and Kilkenny, and I think it all depends on Clare how they bounce back. I think last year is fresh in the mind, and if there's any doubt or if there's any turn up and not put in the performance, like, Kilkenny will take full advantage like they did last year. I think Conlon going injured before the game was a huge loss, but I think there was more to it than that. I think even if Conlon had played, I think Kilkenny were still winning that game last year. But I think at the minute, a lot of talk for this trilogy, the Limerick Clare. I think for me at the minute, I think it'll be a Limerick Clare Ireland final for the media, and they can pump it up, and as they call it, the trilogy, and the Clare have won one, Limerick have won one, and this will be like the best of three. Final in Croke Park, who knows? But I think you'd have to give it to Limerick based on, I suppose, they just don't know how to lose. They don't give up. They seem to always have the answers, and I think they've been building slowly, step by step this year. Certain players getting into a bit of form. I think Kyle Hayes was incredible the last day from where he was start of the year. Growth Hegarty showing signs. Tom Morrissey's incredible year. And Gillan as well, pivotal to Limerick, and Flanagan as well, getting in on the scoring bar the last day. So I think for me at the minute, I'm going to go Limerick Clare Ireland final, and Limerick go on top to do the 4 in a row.
Yeah, exactly. And look, the question was Limerick Kilkenny there. For me, let's call it, like, I'm going to call it Dublin and Tipperary, in the prelims. But Dublin against Clare for me is a banana skin for Clare. Like, if out of the chasing pack here, I think Clare still have the wherewithal. They have the potential here to really kind of secure an All-Ireland crown. They've done it before. They can do it again with some of the Shane O'Donnells, the Tony Kellys here. But I think that Dublin contest will be intriguing. I remember 2018, Kieran, we went down to Dr. Cullen Park when it was in Carlow for a prelim against Carlow. Carlow gave a good test of themselves against Limerick, and Limerick built the momentum. The following week, Kilkenny and Thurles, Cork, obviously. So then I think from that perspective here, I think Clare, but again, I think that quarterfinal will determine an awful lot here because, from a Kilkenny perspective, I think Kilkenny, if they can't get their injuries cleared up, look vulnerable. But saying that, Clare have to right a few wrongs, particularly if they get to that All-Ireland semi-final. I mean, the performance last year fell well short of the standard required. And I think it's more to do with Clare management here that need to now kind of take stock and reflect and see where the adjustments can be made here. That 1-2% here. So for me, it'll be Clare. But yeah, going with you here, Kieran, I think Kilkenny and Limerick are in a nice position. They can look to see these 4 teams now literally do battle in the next few weeks. God knows what controversies, suspensions, injuries are coming out of these games. And the schedule is going to be ticking fast given, we're kind of getting into the championship end of the season, but all to look forward to there. I suppose, Kieran, we'll leave it there. It's been a lengthy one tonight. Hopefully, folks on video, you've enjoyed it tonight. The podcast will be out later tomorrow morning. I suppose, Kieran, next week we'll review these All-Ireland prelim quarterfinals. See if there was a shock in Tullamore or in Carlow, for that matter. And also we'll have a look at the All-Ireland quarterfinals set for decision for the following weekend. So I suppose, Kieran, enjoy the weekend and we'll chat next week.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you liked what you heard in this podcast, why not subscribe to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast on either Amazon, Spotify, YouTube or Twitter platforms. You can also follow me at Hawkeye Sidekick on Facebook and Twitter for the latest sporting opinions, articles and reports.